Earlier, we spoke with former Chief of U.S. Border Patrol Rodney Scott, who's now a senior fellow with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Watch. Rodney, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, now considering the continuing surge of people at the border and this heightened worry about the possibility of Hamas terrorists crossing the border, what's your assessment of that risk?
Very high. The threat's very real. We've had documented ties between Hamas and cartel for drug smuggling going back years, many, many years. We've had known individuals that actually support Hamas financially crossing into the United States. And then today we have thousands of people crossing in every single day that we have no idea who they are, no way to vet them. So that threat is higher than ever.
And a month ago, Joni Ernst and 10 other senators wrote a letter to Joe Biden sounding the alarm over this. What do you think about the way that this threat has been handled so far?
This administration refuses to acknowledge any threat on the border whatsoever. I wrote letters to both the oversight committees in the House and the Senate when I retired, highlighting my concerns that everything that has happened was going to happen, specifically focusing on some of the terrorist threats and the increase of people on the terrorist watch list we were seeing. But this administration wants everybody to think this is simply a migration and a humanitarian issue on the border, and they refuse to talk about any of the threats because they have no answers for it.
And that's a huge threat in itself. What are the most pressing challenges that the border is facing at this point?
So really, the border security, people overly complicated it. It's pretty simple. We need, as a nation, to pick and choose who comes into our country. We need to make conscious decisions. Today, Customs and Border Protection cannot do that because they're completely overwhelmed with these massive numbers. We don't have good databases around the world to say who is and isn't a threat. So it comes down to law enforcement interviews face-to-face to figure out who the person is in front of you and if they pose a threat to our nation. They can't do that today because they don't have time.
And so now, of course, there are reports of virtual processing of some of these migrants and even the suspension of various other types of processing, say vehicles coming across the border at some points. What are the effects of, could you just first of all describe what that involves? And then what are the effects of these changes, would you say?
Sure. So virtual processing is like a Zoom call or a Skype call. It's basically leveraging CBP and Border Patrol personnel from around the whole country to help process people and to get them through the system. So somebody that's caught at the border will be sat in front of a camera, and they'll be talking to an agent in another part of the country. As you know, Zoom calls aren't the best for actually picking up on, body language and everything else. But the other thing is, this is a reminder to America that this is not a southwest border problem. This is a national security problem. We are draining our law enforcement resources from CBP and Border Patrol from around the entire country to simply process people. And when I say process in this case, it's just grabbing biometric information, whatever they provide you very quickly, biographical, putting that into a system and pushing them down the line. Many of them will be released in the United States. They call home and the next wave comes. This is unsustainable, and it's a huge threat.
Now, given your experience serving under many different administrations at the border, what policies or approaches do you think have been most impactful in securing the border?
The most impactful is consequences. And if we look at the last administration, this specific to the threat we have today of this exploiting the asylum process, that forced people to stay in custody or to remain outside the country until an actual judge adjudicates their case, all but completely solved this problem. It wiped out about 80% of the fraud overnight. It dramatically slowed down the flow, and it allowed agents to spend more time on the individuals in front of them to be able to detect that deception and those hidden agendas that aren't going to show up in a records check. Congress does need to fix the asylum system, but we today with policy could fix about 80% of this by simply making people wait outside the country until their case is adjudicated.
All right, Rodney Scott, Senior Fellow for Border Security at the Texas Public Policy Foundation and retired Chief of U.S. Border Patrol. Thank you so much.
Thank you.